march."
Woggs curtsied and ran off. It is probable that at this point the Countess would have resumed her soliloquy, but we shall never know. For the next moment the Princess and her court were seen approaching from the other end of the glade. Belvane advanced to meet them.
"Good morning, your Royal Highness,"
she said.
"A beautiful day, is it not?"
"Beautiful, Countess."
With the court at her back, Hyacinth for the moment was less nervous than usual, but almost at the first words of the Countess she felt her self-confidence oozing from her. "Did I say I was like this with my publishers, and Rogers dragged in Uncle? One can't explain it." The court stood about in picturesque attitudes while Belvane went on.
"Your Royal Highness's brave women defenders, the Home Defence Army of Amazons—"
Here she saluted. One soon gets into the knack of it, and it gives an air of efficiency.
"have looked forward to this day for weeks. How their hearts fill with pride at the thought of being reviewed by your Royal Highness."
She had paid, or rather received, the money for the army so often that she had quite got to believe in its existence. She even kept a roll of the different companies. It meant more delightful red ink, for one thing, and wrote herself little notes recommending Corporal Greatle Hotshot for promotion to sergeant.
"I know very little about armies, I'm afraid,"
said Hyacinth.
"I've always left that to my father. But I think it's a sweet idea of yours to enroll the women to defend me. It's a little expensive, is it not?"
"Your Royal Highness, armies are always expensive."
The Princess took her seat, and beckoned Wiggs, with a smile, to her side. The court, in attitudes even more picturesque than before, grouped itself behind her.
"Is your Royal Highness ready?"
"Quite ready, Countess."
The Countess clapped her hands. There was a moment's hesitation, and then, armed to the teeth, Amazon after Amazon marched by. An impressive scene. However, Wiggs must needs try to spoil it.
"Why, it's Woggs!"
she cried.
"Silly child,"
said Belvane in an undertone, giving her a push. The Princess looked around inquiringly.
"The absurd creature,"
explained the Countess,
"thought she recognized a friend in your Royal Highness's gallant army."
"How clever of her! They all look exactly alike to me."
Belvane was equal to the occasion.
"The uniform and discipline of an army have that effect, rather,"
she said.
"It has often been noticed."
"I suppose so,"
said the Princess vaguely.
"Oughtn't they to march in fours? I seem to remember when I came to reviews with Father—"
"Ah, your Royal Highness, that was an army of men. With women, well, we found that if they marched side by side, they would talk all the time."
The court, having been resting on the right leg with the left knee bent, now rested on the left leg with the right knee bent. Woggs was also getting tired. The last company of the army of Amazons was not marching with the abandon of the first company.
"I think I should like them to halt now so that I can address them,"
said Hyacinth. Belvane was taken aback for the moment.
"I am afraid, your Royal Highness,"
she stammered, her brain working busily all the time,
that would be contrary to the spirit of the King's regulations. An army in marching order must march."
She made a long forward movement with her hand.
"Must march,"
she repeated, with an innocent smile.
"I see,"
said Hyacinth, blushing guiltily again. Belvane gave a loud cough. The last veteran but two of the army looked inquiringly at her and passed. The last veteran but one came in and was greeted with a still louder cough. Rather tentatively the last veteran of all entered and met with such an unmistakable frown that it was obvious that the march past was over. Woggs took off her helmet and rested in the bushes.
"That is all, your Royal Highness,"
said Belvane.
158 marches past, 217 reported sick, making 622. 9 are on guard at the palace. 632 and 9 make 815. Add 28 under age, and we bring it up to the round 1,000.
Wiggs opened her mouth to say something, but decided that her mistress would probably wish to say it instead. Hyacinth, however, merely looked unhappy. Belvane came a little nearer.
I forgot if I mentioned to your Royal Highness that we are paying out today. 1 silver piece a day, and several days in the week multiplied by, how many did I say? Comes to 10,000 pieces of gold.
She produced a document, beautifully ruled.
If your Royal Highness would kindly initial here.
Mechanically the princess signed.
Thank you, your Royal Highness. And now perhaps I had better go and see about it at once.
She curtsied deeply, and then, remembering her position, saluted and marched off. Now Roger Scurvilegs would see her go without a pang. He would then turn over to his next chapter, beginning Meanwhile the King, and leave you under the impression that the Countess Belvane was a common thief. I am no such chronicler as that. At all costs I will be fair to my characters. Belvane, then, had a weakness. She had several, of which I have already told you, but this is another one. She had a passion for the distribution of largesse. I know an old gentleman who plays bowls every evening. He trundles his skip, or whatever he calls it, to one end of the green, toddles after it, and trundles it back again. Think of him for a moment, and then think of Belvane, on her cream-white palfrey, tossing a bag of gold to right of her, and flinging a bag of gold to left of her, as she rides through the cheering crowds. Upon my word, I think hers is the more admirable exercise, and I assure you no less exacting. When once one has got into this habit of flinging and tossing money, to give it in an ordinary way, to slide it gently into the palm, is unbearable. Which of us who has, in an heroic moment, flung half-a-crown to a cabman, can ever be content afterwards to hold out a handful of threepenny bits and coppers to him? One must always be flinging. So it was with Belvane. The largesse habit had got hold of her. It is an expensive habit, but her way of doing it was less expensive than most. The people who were taxed to pay for the Amazon army, the pay of the Amazon army was flung back at them. Could anything be fairer? True, it brought her admiration and applause, but what woman does not like admiration? Is that an offence? If it is something very different from the common theft of which Roger Scurvilegs would accuse her. Let us be fair. End of chapter 5.